Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School and author of The Case Against Impeaching Trump, Alan Dershowitz joins me. Professor, great to have you with us. Now, as these reports continue to emerge surrounding Jeremy Corbyn, the accusation that the Labor leader is anti-Semitic seems to follow shortly after. Is Corbyn's criticism of Israel tantamount to anti-Semitism?
Look, Corbyn doesn't just criticize Israel. He singles out the nation-state of the Jewish people for criticism. He calls Tzipi Livni, who is a great force for peace, a war criminal, and he praises people like Chavez and Castro and people who have murdered tens of thousands of people. He himself, Corbyn, is an inciter of terrorism. When you go and visit and praise the terrorists who murdered Israeli athletes and coaches, you're complicit in encouraging and glorifying terrorism. So the evidence is overwhelming that Corbyn singles out only the nation state of the Jewish people. That is tantamount to anti-Semitism, applying a double standard to only the nation state of the Jewish people. If he was a man who across the board condemned violence or condemned war, that would be one thing, but he only condemns it when it's engaged in by the nation state of the Jewish people, and he gives a complete pass to much, much, much worse violence. He would welcome with open arms war criminals from all over the world if they only were people of the left who supported him. So yes, the charge of anti-Semitism is very strong, and it transcends his anti-Zionism and his anti-Israel attitudes.
In a more general sense, is the distinction being made between being supportive of the Palestinian cause and being anti-Semitic?
He doesn't care about the Palestinians at all. When's the last time he talked about the people who are dying among the Kurds, the people who are dying in other parts of the world? The only reason he focuses on the Palestinians is because their alleged oppressors are the nation state of the Jewish people. His anti-Semitism drives his concern for the Palestinians, not the reverse. He is pro-Palestinian only because of his anti-Semitism, not because he cares about the Palestinian people. If he cared about the Palestinian people, he would have been active in supporting the Palestinians against the Jordanians, supporting the Palestinians against other Arab oppressors, supporting the Palestinians against their own oppressors in Hamas. He couldn't care less about the Palestinian people. The notion that he's pro-Palestinian is nonsense. He's an anti-Semite, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, anti-everything Jewish, anti the nation state of the Jewish people. He is a despicable human being who does not stand for the good people of Great Britain. And many people in Great Britain are going to vote for him, not because of his anti-Semitism, but despite his anti-Semitism. And that's been true of other anti-Semites throughout history. But he is an anti-Semite. Let there be no mistake about it. And if he were to be elected Prime Minister of England, it would pose an existential threat for the future of Great Britain, for the future of the American Great Britain alliance, and for the future of the Israeli Great Britain alliance. So It's a really serious problem, and everybody should be concerned about this bigot who tries to become the prime minister of a great country.
Just looking at the way that the term anti-Semitism is used, is there something unique about Israel's case that when someone is against Israel's politics, they're all of a sudden a traitor to the Jews?
No, that's not true. I'm against it. Many of Israelis' politics. If people who were opposed to Israeli policies were regarded as anti-Semitic, the greatest concentration of anti-Semites in the world would be in Tel Aviv. And the most anti-Semitic newspaper in the country would be Haaretz. And the great Uri Avneri, who died the other day, would be called an anti-Semite. Nobody ever calls, no legitimate person calls criticism of Israeli politics anti-Semitic. But that's not what Corbyn's about. Corbyn's about the existence of the nation state of the Jewish people. Right. He'd prefer to see a world without Israel. He only singles out Israelis as war criminals, not real war criminals.
But if we look at the interchangeability, sorry to interrupt you, between anti-Semitism and anti-Israeli sentiment, if you compare Israel to the United States, for just as one example, if someone is against Trump's policies, it doesn't instantly make them anti-American. But if Netanyahu's policies are criticised, does that make one anti-Israel?
Of course not. Of course not. A very substantial plurality of Israelis are against Netanyahu's policies. Nobody would ever call a critic of anybody's policies an anti-Semite any more than you would call a critic of Trump's policies anti-Protestant or anti-Christian. But when the major categories of anti-Semitism, singling out Israel for unique condemnation, delegitimizing the nation state of the Jewish people, applying a double standard to them, being concerned only with Israel's imperfections rather than the much greater imperfections of other countries in the world, that qualifies as anti-Semitism. There is no doubt in my mind that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite, that he hates the Jewish people, and that's why he hates Israel, because it is the nation state of the Jewish people, and that's why he supports the Palestinian cause, not because he cares about the Palestinians. He does not, because he only cares about Israel and who Israel is alleged to be oppressing, the Palestinians.
Professor Emeritus Alan Dershowitz, appreciate your time. Thank you for being with us here on Perspectives.
Thank you.